Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robert T. Green. I'm the CEO of Pre-Post Game, coming to you live on April 25th, 2018, the day before the NFL Draft 2018. This podcast is presented by Pre-Post Game, sponsored by the African American Athlete. I'm hosted by Mr. Ricky Hampton and also Mr. Michael Robertson. I thank you guys again for joining in every Wednesday as we discuss sports business. As I say, sports is not a game, it's all business. And we're doing this live to basically go back to a post or a podcast I did a couple of days ago, because the reality is people have to understand that literally what goes on in this business. And if you give me 1 second, I want to mute my actual headset because this is starting to agitate me already. Hold on 1 second. About sports is not a game, it's all business, and about terms such as trust the process, focus on the game, and everything to take care of itself. Again, let me unmute my speaker now. Hold on 1 second. Okay. About sports is not a game, it's all business, and about terms such as trust the process, focus on the game, and everything to take care of itself. Again, let me unmute my speaker now. So yeah, I apologize for that once again. So now that I kind of caught up and I'm just going to speak freely, if you guys, like I said, have something to say, please just chime in on the pin section. But again, when we talk about sports, again, the draft coming up, NFL draft, NBA draft in a couple months. Today, as of recently, the NCAA commission pertaining to the athletes and their actual findings on the NCAA basketball scandal and their recommendations pertaining to banning the one and done rule, but also trying to give a lifetime ban to what they call cheaters and asking for the support from the the NBA and NBA PA, support them in that. What Ms. Condoleezza Rice does not understand that, one, when you make a statement such as that at a level that you make it and so broad, but yet not realizing that this situation is not isolated to just basketball. This is football, this is baseball, this is across the board. We talk about sports trafficking. Although I'm sure she put all her efforts and heartfelt concern into what goes into the athlete. I had a great conversation with a mentor of mine today, and we talked about something called dignity. We're talking about, men and women the age of 15 to 19 to 20 years old, that literally all these committees or people are making decisions without the input of what they want to do. And also the reality is when the Mark Emmert, the president of the NCAA, says that it's there at university and wants to see the athletes compensated for playing, or they don't want to see going towards professionalism, and basically wants players to not try to go pro but want to play in college. But the reality is you're not focusing on what's really going on. Whether those players decide to go to the NBA or stay in school for a year, if the kids went to the NBA, you're still going to be making an enormous amount of money off of the backs and the efforts and the skills and the likeness of the athletes that do not go pro. And that's the whole point of the matter. So again, this whole diversion, if you will, one, I don't see this actually going anywhere, because the reality is there's so many things that's going on from the inside for the NCAA to take a commission report based off of that standing and act like they have nothing to do with what's going on in the NCAA. We know here directly at Pre-Post Game that is not happening. That's never happened. And the reality is the majority of the people that actually traffic these young men and women are already planted inside of the universities. We deal with the daily pertaining to certain coaches that are recruiting young men and women to go to certain schools only to take jobs elsewhere to receive more revenue. So once again, like, I'm going to talk about the business aspect of the sport. We talk about that phrase again, trust the process, focus on the game, and everything take care of itself. What Fortune 100, 500, what company basically comes to you and says, you know what, if you're going to work today, I'm going to provide you a business plan, a value proposition, and I'm going to tell you to sign your name right here because it's God's plan. Again, you're talking about education, free education. The fact of the matter is telling young men and women that they should just focus on the game and everything take care of itself when everybody around them is making revenue off of what they do is a disgrace. And they keep talking about terms such as free education, where you can't even find one player at any level at any time You can't do one recording, one video show to go on campus and record what happens in a day of an athlete, but yet you want to preach that stuff. The fact of the matter is you can't trust a process if it's set up to go against you. That's one. Two, the reality is these young men and women need to know their worth. They need to know their value. And the dignity, if they had any pertaining to the NCAA, was to give it back to these actual families that they make money off of. They would input or take the input of what's going on with them. We don't need to, no disrespect to Mr. Grant Hill or Mr. David Robinson. Those young men were raised in certain homes in certain areas where literally they never been aware half of these athletes come from a poverty level. But yet you're going to basically take it from their word because they happen to be African-American, such as myself, and say they have an understanding and grasp what goes on. Mr. Grant Hill grew up literally about 20 minutes from where I live right now, South Lakes, Virginia. And I can assure you, Mr. Grant Hill never missed a meal. He never wanted for anything. So the fact of the matter is, the majority of the kids that are being recruited from these schools are basically going to these universities based off of their poverty, based off of their hopes and belief to go pro, knowing that up to this point that the NCAA was the avenue they had to take to get there. I'm glad to see there's new areas, the new avenues that's coming out, whether it's the JBA or the NBL over in Australia, or again, from football standpoint, you have the XFL and you have the AAFL that's coming out soon as well, spring leagues. Because again, college isn't for everybody. And to turn around and say that these young men are getting a free education when you got plenty of them that's going to be drafted tomorrow, that literally if you ask them to write a paper or have an interview with someone, they can't even, speak terms of the English dictionary. Kind of some of the highest rated schools when it comes to the Power 5 conference, but all the money's being supported and put there. So once again, we talk about sports is not a game. Sports is all business. If you guys have any questions, again, please put them on the comment area. If the live streaming is going well, please let me know. I want to make sure this is the first time we're doing this today. So I want to make sure the content is coming through and going the way you guys need to go. Or here, I'm sorry, I apologize. So now that that's out the way, the NFL draft is tomorrow, where you have 255 guys are going to be drafted. Approximately another 250 are going to be signed as a free agent to the National Football League. God bless and congratulations to them and their families. They've worked extremely hard to get there, and I'm sure this is one of the most exciting times of their life. However, you must understand, too, when you got people coming in, you got those that are going out. And for that reason and that reason alone, my company, Pre-Post Game, that you see on the side, was created to talk about pre-post game. You never know when the end of the career is going to come. And we created actually this first sports business program, if you will, to basically give athletes an opportunity to, figure out what they're going to do, who they are after the game is over, to make sure they can be successful on and off the field long term. I'm trying to look up something real quick where I can just show you guys just a simple module where some of the content that we've created for these actual young men and women. So when they no longer play, they have an avenue to basically be able to learn and move forward in that area. Okay, give me 1 second. Mr. Ricky Hampton should be joining us shortly. He'll take your questions. He'll also comment in about what's going on in the world of sports from history and current sports today. No difficulties right now. I apologize. Okay. I'm going to do is share the screen of some of the things that we did with the first sports-based curriculum in the country, if you will, pertaining to all the things that go into the sports business. So if you guys can see this, obviously, again, when we're talking about being an athlete, we also created the first sports dictionary pertaining to what you need to know and understand as an athlete. No matter how young you may be, there's things that you need to understand regarding the sports business and how these things actually work. What I'm going to try to do is scroll up to give you some of this content so you can see exactly what goes into it. As you can see on your screen, Ultimate Sports Dictionary is one. How are you doing, Mr. Hampton? Welcome. I'm just going over a few things to catch you up. We were just talking about, the term trusted process and how in business and sports those things really don't operate. And I'm also going over a few things pertaining to what athletes at every level, when they no longer, after the draft happens tomorrow, there's things that these athletes are going to have to go through they're not prepared for. And again, we created the world's first sports business curriculum, digital base-wise, where we can actually answer the questions for you. So again, if you got questions, we can talk about things such as investing in yourself, investing in your business, the true essence of sports career statistics, your transition succession planning, money management, technology, your transition to college when you're at a younger level, what you need to understand about what they're going to tell you, not what you need to know, but what you want to hear, which can set you up for failure, teach you how to not get played. How do you develop as a person and a character when you have so much different things that's on top of your weight on your shoulders from the coach, from the school, from your family. So all these different things, if you will, are set up to basically put the athlete in a situation where they're prepared and they'll be able to do certain things long term that literally most athletes don't have the time, or the parents don't have the understanding and opportunity to figure out what's what. So again, we're very proud of that at pre-post game. We continue to try to basically have the cutting edge of sports business, understanding the realities of what goes into this actual business at every level, to be the advocate, the one true advocate on behalf of these athletes and what they need to know, not what they want to hear necessarily, the opposite of what goes into the norm. So I'm going to, if you have any questions, Mr. Hampton, please chime in, and I apologize. I just want to make sure if the actual feed is going well, because again, as I told you, I apologize to anyone if you guys have difficulty seeing or following along. If the content is choppy, please let me know. Send me a instant message or a PM to let me know directly. That'll be great. Okay, so don't have any issues thus far. So NFL draft tomorrow, 2:55. Once again, starts at 7 p.m. On Fox and also on NFL Network. For those that literally don't understand, the NFL draft is taking place in Dallas, Arlington, Texas, where the Dallas Cowboys play. Again, a lot of these young men, the majority of them are underclassmen. Because of the majority of underclassmen, they means they have not graduated. Going back to that whole education piece, free education, the majority of athletes that are highly rated, whether it's in basketball or football, if you will, and knowing that these young men are going to become overnight millionaires, yet they're not walking away with degrees. And again, for those that say that, they can always come back and get that degree, if you look at the statistics and the numbers, they don't do that as well. The truth of the matter is you can get an education at any time, but you can't play sports forever. Your body has a number of plays in it when it comes to the sports business, professionally speaking. Two of the main things that get you compensated for your actual skill set is your health and your age. If either one of those are not going in your favor, your career professionally be short-lived. However, if those that are biggest proponent about they don't want these kids to get paid in college, then let these kids go play pro and they can come back and then they can play for you after they no longer top notch. They can come back after they tried to be in the pros and they can come back and play for the NCAA. There's so many different things that can happen pertaining if what they were saying was true pertaining to sports is not a game and sports is all business. Again, talking about LeVar Ball, what he did with his son is taking him overseas and playing in Lithuania. The reality is, again, those young men wanted to play basketball. Education-wise, speaking-wise, if you talk about what the goal is, education is to provide an opportunity to be compensated at what you're good at. And then the reality is if you want to go back and learn more, have a trade, a craft, open a business, you can do that. But when it comes to sports, your notoriety, your following is what gets you compensated. So I believe Lavelle, the youngest one, has about 3 million followers on social media. And what the importance of that is that That's about sponsors and advertising. If you are staying out of trouble, as Mr. LeVar Ball's younger son is, you can able to use that from a monetary gain standpoint to put yourself in a situation long term. Now, once he gets that compensation, he no longer can play. He's early 20s, maybe 30s, and literally he can go back to school. But the rule of thumb was saying that, you need to go to get your education. You don't see Mark Emmert or any of these coaches or any of these so-called administrators willing to work for free and literally coach these young men or young women at the NCAA level. So the reality is that these things need to stop. Again, I apologize. I'm a little off right now because as I do this live feed, I kind of see myself and then literally my mouth is moving, but I can't actually tell if what I'm being said is being received properly. I promise by next week I'll have it all worked out, even though next week I'll probably be on location to do this actual podcast. Once again, to catch everybody up, my name is Robert T. Green. I'm the CEO of my company, Pre-Post Game, as you see over my shoulder. Again, my company is a sports business and advisory firm for athletes. We provide consulting, we provide mentoring, we provide transition succession planning. We also provide counseling from a mental health aspect, actually asking the athlete, do they know who they are outside of the game? We understand when they're no longer the prize priority for these schools and universities and these teams, that at any given moment, they can turn their back on them and never to return. So again, we've been there, we've done that. It's kind of why we created our structure and our model. We created the first actual, like I said, sports business curriculum from a digital beta standpoint to cover every module and experience you can go through. Some of the things we talk about is character development. I'll share that screen in a second. We'll talk about such things as, the dictionary, what every athlete needs to know and understand pertaining to the sports business. These words are something that you literally should always be ready to actually know and understand. Bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to go over some of those words and just speak on them so I can provide the education. Again, for me, that's my checks and balance system. And one thing I teach everybody, especially kids, is that when you're talking to someone pertaining to sports, if they're not doing these three things, and again, these principles can also apply in life: educate, empower, protect. Anybody speaking to you about anything pertaining to sports, you should be able to know they're doing those three things. If they're not, you probably want to move on, because at the end of the day, their thought process is to use you to basically make things happen for them, not necessarily yourself. So I'm going to go and find the dictionary. And again, it's 41 words, but literally we just, getting started when it comes to these things. I'm going to share my screen with you guys again. We'll share my screen means that literally from our actual website and our technology, we have the ability to share information with you, to teach you about certain things. And we find that sports, because it's a business, that a lot of people just watch it as a fan and not really understand what goes into this business. And then these young men or women and their families are susceptible to a lot of things that they shouldn't be at this point. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. I'm just going to go over a couple of these words once they pop up on the screen. And we call it the Ultimate Sports Dictionary. It's all that speaks the language of sports, everything you need to know about sports. Every young athlete, every parent should know what these words mean and how they can use these words to actually put themselves in the best situation possible. I won't go through all of them, but just run down a few of them. I'll just scroll down. And again, one of the main things we talk about as stage relationships. So the reality is a lot of people are going to meet you as a highly rated athlete and a parent. You're going to go places such as the supermarket. Once your son or daughter has been identified as a highly talented athlete at certain things, people are going to start popping up in church, start to introduce themselves, going to start to tell you things that how you can relate to them, or they know somebody that you know. Those things are staged. The reality is you have to understand, you become a pro athlete the moment someone is willing to pay money to watch your son and daughter play. And for that reason alone, everyone needs to make sure that they understand that you want to take more things in and not give things out. You will find that people that want to get to know you and your kid want to ask questions to you about what you're doing, what your plans are, as opposed to you should be asking them who they are, where they come from, and how do they find you, and most importantly, what are their intentions. If you present it that way, you will find that those that are really genuine about who they are and not stage a relationship, they should talk to you genuinely about no one else. But you will find that it's a stage relationship. They're going to tell you, oh, a friend of such and such told me about you. Or do you know this person or that person? That's the beginning of what we call about sports trafficking. Today on NBC's Deadline, D.L. Hughley and other guests of the NFL and NBA are different, and the NBA is more players league, and NFL is more owners league. What do you think impacts the bottom line? That's a great question, Ms. Motley. The reality is, again, it's not so much the players league and the owners league. It's all about, we talk about the actual CBA, and that's the union. Unfortunately, because of the rules when it comes to the NBA and the level, meaning right now, technically, you have to be at least 1 year out of high school, 19 years old, where you can go to the NBA out of high school. And NCAA for football, you got to be out of high school for 3 years prior to going. There's a lot of things that's being done and put in place from the players' union standpoint, from the NFL standpoint, that's going to affect players in college that are sophomores right now. The NCAA, the universities, the schools that they play for are not talking to them. They're not presenting things to them about anything that basically should matter to them in the next 2 to 3 years. Therefore, when it comes down to it, the owners are the ones in the NFL end up controlling what happens to these players through their own players' union. The fact of the matter is, if you ask players that are coming out in college right now who is the head of the players' union, they couldn't tell you. Whereas the NBA, you got younger guys that are coming in, they're throwing in right away. They know exactly what's going on. And at the same time, so the standpoint is that, if you know more, if you're more educated, then they can change some of these things. During the year, DeMar Smith, who is their current players rep union leader, was challenged by a guy named Cyrus Murray. And then at the end of the day, before he could actually challenge him, there's something that happened where based off the rules that are put in place, that if Cyrus didn't have it, or if it wasn't unanimous through all the players that are currently on the board, Cyrus would have a chance to be voted in. And again, who made that rule? Who does that benefit? It absolutely don't benefit the actual player, because the reality is, again, who's to say that those 14 players or those players that's current on the players board for the NFL right now aren't working on behalf of the team or the actual themselves? Again, they should be beholden to the future of the NFL, the future players in the NFL. But if you look at the situation where just, prior to the new CBA in 2011, the players are making approximately, I think 49% of the revenue is now down to 48, 47. But at one point back when Gene Upshaw was the actual leader of the union, they was making more money than that. But think about it. The NFL is generating more revenue than they ever had before. The players are better, they're bigger, faster, stronger, and they're losing money. The NBA, for example, you talk about a players league and the owners league. Well, in the NBA, the players last year were fined only $3 million for things such as fights or altercations, or a silly rule like coming off the floor or things like that, where the NFL, you got rules where just 2 years ago, if you dance, they will fine you like, $9,000 to $10,000 for the first time. Then the second time, they will fine you double the amount. The NFL fine fee from last year was $25 million. I believe the year before that was $35 million. So think about that from a standpoint where you got guaranteed contracts in baseball and football. Baseball and basketball, where there's less collisions, there's less likely to have a major injury, versus the other side of the equation, where there's football, where they are finding these guys who don't have guaranteed contracts, 25 and 35 million, where their commissioner, who can ask and receive $50 million in compensation, lifetime insurance, and yet he never played football whatsoever. So again, it's not an owners league. It's a league where players need to become more educated on the football side about what really goes into this business. As many of you don't know, I used to play sports myself, and I like to think that for those who don't understand the indoor and arena game, we play on walls, we play with turf on top of ice hockey, with some of those pads where you go over the wall, it's concrete on the floor. Fullbacks in our league was about 300 pounds and nimble and quick feet. My position in particular, every time you got inside the 5-yard line, I had to tackle someone that was almost close to 100 pounds than me at running full speed, or getting around someone running full speed at me at the same time. I like to think that because I use my mind and I basically realized that I couldn't take care of myself for the rest of my life, I was able to transition, understanding that that wasn't going to be it for me. However, in the NFL, a lot of these players have, again, a dream of what pro football really means. The average career in the NFL is 2.9 years, but there's still math to this equation because, once again, when you talk about the business of sport, even when it comes to anything, I talked about the term Popeye. For those older people such as myself, Popeye used to be a show with olive oil and a guy named Popeye. And it was a man named Wimpy. He used to say all the time, "I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today." And that's kind of what goes on in the NFL. And it's unfortunate because, once again, in the real world in business, nobody operates like that. These young men that spent the last 5 months preparing for the actual NFL draft, they basically signed contracts agreeing to compensation for people that literally were, not there or not going to be there after the fact when they get drafted. Nowhere else in America do they do that. Again, what they could have done, it's like our company has said, to say, hey, well, if I want you to represent me, if I get drafted in rounds such 1, 2, or 3, this is what I'm willing to compensate you. No one goes to their job every day and tells someone who they work for how they're going to be compensated for that situation. But when it comes to athletes, for whatever reason, they feel like, whoever created that structure, the agent structure, that they have to do that, and they do not. And again, at the end of the day, we talk about the 4 major sports in this country, they're already slotted, meaning baseball, football, basketball, football. I believe when it comes to baseball, you can pay up to 6%. In football, you can pay up to 3%. In basketball, you can pay up to 2%. But it's like I said, you're talking about players league versus owners league. Well, in a non-collision sport like basketball, the rookie contract is only 2 years. And then if you play well, you can move forward. So again, you talk about everything that goes from the NCAA to the pros is set up in the favor of the actual leagues and the teams. But the NBA has a better sense of understanding that these players are the reason who generate the revenue. And that's why there's a better relationship between them and the actual leagues. Where it comes to football, and again, people talk about Colin Kaepernick. When I talk about the business side of things, Mr. Kaepernick doesn't want to stand up in the NFL or as a private-owned business decide that they don't like that. They have their right. It's like Mr. Kaepernick has a right to take his knee. However, at the same time, the NFL has gotten to the point where they think that without the player, that they're going to be sustainable. And that's because of the system that's put in place. The coaches, the GMs, the agents. Once again, players that play football in particular are looked at and thought about as gladiators. And they talk about those terms again. Focus on the game and everything, take care of itself. Trust the process. By trusting the process, the players don't have guaranteed contracts. By trusting the process, these guys do not have graduating degrees. By trusting the process, these guys are going broke within 2 years outside of the National Football League when they retire. By trusting the process, these young men don't know who they are after they no longer play the game. By trusting the process, they didn't understand that literally, if you're an undrafted free agent and you play in the NFL for 2 years and you ain't got on the field yet, if your agent, asked you or told you should go to a certain team, you didn't touch that field yet, the NFL does not want to pay your pension in year 3. Or if you make it to year 3, they don't want to pay your severance package in year 4. I can't tell you how many parents and athletes we talk to that they don't even know what's going on in their own contract that they sign. There's words and terminology such as perpetuity when coming to marketing. As of 2018, the Trump tax reforms, agents can no longer tell a player or a family that they can have their services or their fees deducted based off of the new tax reforms. However, pertaining to marketing, there's a loophole in that where now, agencies are now charging players, an enormous amount, say 20 or 30% for something that they did not do. And then they throw that term perpetuity in, and a kid don't know what that word means. It just sits in the middle of nowhere. So for those that don't know, perpetuity means for life. So basically, by signing that agreement, that young man gave the rights to that agency, whoever may be, to utilize their likeness to get monetary value for life, and they feel like that's okay. But once again, these universities, these universities of higher learning, about teaching kids about what education really is. As an athlete, a former athlete, I don't mind telling you, I, as a pro athlete, did not know what it means to pay taxes. I turned 27 years old. Again, as of right now, at the end of the day, thank God for my CPA, my certified public accountant. Before I got to this point, not understanding that as I played all these pro years in the pros, there wasn't an agent, there wasn't a college coach, there wasn't a teacher, there wasn't anyone to say, hey, are you paying your taxes? I looked at my check and money was coming out. Now I spent years in school, years. And one day when we do this podcast, I'm going to talk to you guys about the realities of what goes on, how, again, when you talk about free education, there's thousands of young men out there that have what you call loans from these same universities that literally were told there would be scholarships for these young men by the same universities, by the same school. There's a thing called a full scholarship and a partial scholarship. There's a thing called in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition. A lot of these things that go on in college, these people aren't aware. It's no different when someone tells you, hey, you're going to get a full scholarship. There's several universities in the recruiting process that tell you you're going to be on a full scholarship, but they don't tell the parent or the athlete that literally you got to move your stuff 3 times a year. Meaning, if a parent doesn't have a lot of money and they come from a lot of times an urban area, a poor neighborhood, and all of a sudden you now got to be kicked out of your dorm, the university did not tell you that while they was recruiting you. They said full scholarship. They said you'll be taken care of. And now a lot of these young men turn to these runners and turn to these different people that literally aren't doing what they're supposed to do. And then you have these same issues there. Obviously, like I said, Mr. Joe Smith, a former NBA player that made $61 million, and he went broke mentally and physically, emotionally and socially. He recently did a show on Alex Rodriguez show pertaining to how he got to that point. Now, mind you, he's not the only one that went through that, but God bless Mr. Smith to be willing to step out and talk about things that literally happens to majority of athletes, the majority of the student athletes, majority of those that went through the same process that they trusted at every level. And at the end of the day, where most won't, they don't like to mention names, they don't want to talk about, like, blame the athlete. But when you are institutionalized, and I use that terminology such as a pig and bacon, to get a good piece of bacon, you got to fatten that pig up real nice before you slaughter it. And again, you talk about how much money is being generated and revenue is being generated in the sport, that you only have a certain amount of time to play. There should be a lot more done to basically put these young men and young women in better situations. A lot of people talk about the Title IX scenario when it comes to women being paid. The bottom line is this: a simple equation to fix this problem. If you're generating revenue, you should be getting compensated. Any job in America, you don't go to work today or tomorrow, and when you get to work and they got a training going on, and you sit there, you took that training, and then come Friday, you're looking for your check, and they're going to say, well, we're not going to pay you. We gave you training. You should be happy. Now we're talking about, again, $1 trillion business. But those are people that's looking at business or sports as just a game. Like I said, again, we talk about construction, meaning building of the stadiums. We talk about the scoreboards. We talk about referees. We talk about commentators. We talk about journalists. We talk about people that own businesses like me, that's sports business advisory management. Without the player, none of us exist. We're not working in sports. Every single one of us is generating revenue off of what they do. And in return, you talk about that free education or that scholarship. Most people don't understand. When you go to school and you get a scholarship, a lot of these young men and women are getting books that have been refurbished because the young men and women can't sell those books. So that, again, where a regular student can sell that book back, you end up getting a book that somebody had a year before you. And at the same time, they give you all the gear. Do you understand what marketing is? If you basically don't have to pay someone, you give them an outfit and wear that actual gear, you are basically using them to get free advertising and marketing again. So once again, you're talking about young athletes, sometimes predominantly African-American athletes or rural athletes from rural areas who parents or grandparents don't have great educational background. And again, for those that say, well, what would they do? They don't have that free education. Or those that are quick to give credit to certain universities for certain programs and certain things. You have, for example, 2 great kids of all accounts in Minka Fitzpatrick and Anthony Averett, 2 DBs from Alabama, national championship DBs, going to be drafted relatively high. Congratulations to them. The media says, the world says, oh, what a great coach Nick Saban is. Then you have Reuben Foster from Alabama, and you have a guy, Raekwon Davis, shot himself, domestic violence, smoking weed, arrested 5 times. But you're not giving Nick Saban the same credit for those guys. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You're talking about free education. It is clear that a lot of these young men come from great family homes. They come from areas where they were raised right and raised properly. And you have other situations where young men do not have the proper guidance and tutelage. And because they don't, the athletic ability is clear is the only thing that university interested in. If Reuben Foster couldn't play football with his character and his attitude and the way he acted, would the University of Alabama or would NCAA be giving them free education? When these young men in the NFL or NBA failing drug tests left and right, do you think that they just started smoking weed once they got to the NBA or the NFL? Of course not. It happened a lot earlier. And to think that anyone on a college campus don't know what these young men are doing at the same time, they don't have no problem signing or cashing their checks off of what they do on Saturdays is hypocrisy at the highest level. Mark Emmert's getting paid $10 million a year for doing what? Continuing to make money off of kids and then finding an excuse why they should not get paid? That's a disgrace. The reason why I do this podcast now, although it's different than my business, because at the end of the day, I need to provide true education and understanding on behalf of the player and the family. And this is for the average fan, because at the end of the day, athletes get such a bad rap. Yes, when it comes to being held accountable, they should be held accountable in certain areas. But the reality is, you hear the expression, you are who you surround yourself with. These young men that have these issues and these troubles, they didn't just happen overnight. And at the end of the day, when things go wrong, people look the other way because they're making all the money. But again, there's, for example, in the NBA, there's 64 picks. Top 40 usually gets paid a lot of money in the NBA draft. If those 40 players decided to go to the JBA or the NBL or the NBA Junior League instead of going to the NCAA would lose a lot of money. However, they'll still be making money off of the rest of the kids that return. So again, your mental, health, your confidence in who you are as a young man, women. A lot of people talk about, kids being soft or things of that nature. When you recruit a kid, you can do this, you can do that. No one really knows about what really goes on behind those doors. Talk about Michigan State, what happened with Larry Nassar and also the USA Olympic team. Do you think for a second that what happened to those young women, the rest of the people around them didn't know what was going on? Yet you're quick to look the other way in order to say you're a champion, a champion. But these young women were decimated. Their hearts are broken. They felt like the people that's supposed to be supporting them turned their back on them. And now you do a couple weeks of a story. You do the Me Too moment. These things that happen to these young women are going to be there forever. These things that happen to these young men are going to be there forever. And someone needs to be held accountable for it. That's one of the reasons why, again, I'm the player's rep. We know who they are. We know who the runners are. We know who the violators are. We know where they're at. And at the end of the day, as people continue to look the other way and dismiss the fact that these young men are the reason why you're employed, once again, sports is about two things, people: selling tickets and recruiting. If you're not selling tickets, you're not recruiting properly, you're going to be out of a job. Pre-post game in our networks and our associates, we pride ourselves in basically taking information that is factual. We take it pride in disseminating it properly to the right people. We take pride in basically not, providing our service for any kickbacks, any referrals. Again, for me personally, I go back to that dignity. I do not wake up every morning looking to appease or looking to make someone happy in what I do when I'm only trying to help other people. I heard someone say today, like I said, we need to get back to what living life when it comes to conviction. Meaning no matter what's going on, I have conviction to do what's right because it's right. Not because it's easy, not because I'm looking for a certain amount of money to be made, not because I have nothing else better to do, and not because, again, I feel like having people disregard me as a person, what I try to do. These young men and women are committed to their team. They're committed to their teammates. They're committed to being the best people they can be. And the reality is they need a lot more support than they get today. And again, so we like to talk about, again, it's not a game, it's all business, because again, business is like in sports is short-lived. You have a short amount of time to execute that. So one of the things that we also talk about, and I'll go into a couple more words. I mentioned stage relationship, but I'm going to go into a story. Since the NFL draft tomorrow, I'm going to give this free information away. So in 2016, the NFLPA changed the rules when it comes to the actual agent fees, meaning NFLPA certified agents are supposed to or required to start the negotiation piece with that athlete or that actual family at 1.5%. And they can basically negotiate or try to prove to the kid or convince the kid that they're worth up to 3%. However, a lot of the things that have been brought to our attention by athletes and our clients and their families, that a lot of agents are literally starting off by saying that is 3%. And the reason why it's 3% because of the training. So again, they don't even entertain the fact that, they're not even following the rules. However, the NCAA has not provided any type of guidance or documentation on what they need to know regarding to how to hire, who to hire. There's a lot of conflict of interest that goes on. People that don't understand where the runners come from, a lot of these so-called agents are representing the actual coaches. So when certain vacations or certain holidays come around and certain former players are in the area, that trainer who happens to be working with or for that actual agency who is actually represented by that actual coach ends up getting in front of a kid that's unprepared and uneducated on all these things. That's what the stage relationship is. That's what the runner is. And it all becomes overwhelming for that young man. So now when one kid signs with 3%, the next guy signs with 3%. If you know math, a simple equation is that there's some agencies today still telling kids and families that if you get drafted as the top 10, we're only going to charge you 1% in the NFL draft. If you get drafted from 11 to 20, we're going to charge you 2%. And if you get drafted from 21 to 32, we charge you 3%. So if anybody knows that, again, these contracts are slotted. So once again, from a percentage standpoint, it is a crying shame that you're going to tell a kid that you're going to charge them 1%, knowing that 1% in the top 10 is a lot more than 2% from 12 to 20. And 2% is a lot more from 3% from 21 to 32. Yet you do that with a smile on your face and you want to call the kid's family. And the bottom line is if I'm a top 10 pick, I have a lot more business and a lot more responsibilities than I would if I'm a top 29 pick. But again, sports is not a game, it's all business. Who allows these people to continue to basically deal with or advise or work on behalf of athletes at the end of the day that continue to go broke? We do not work on behalf. We don't work for or against the NCAA. We don't work for or against any professional league. We simply work for and on behalf of the athlete and the family's best interest and theirs alone. So to recap things again, my name is Robert T. Green. I'm the CEO of Pre-Post Game. This show is presented by Pre-Post Game. It's sponsored by the African American Athlete Talk Show hosted by Ricky Hampton and Mr. Michael Robinson. You can check those guys out on Tuesday nights, every Tuesday from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can check them out at the AfricanAmericanAthlete.com. You can also tune in every Wednesday here for our Pre-Post Game Sports is Not a Game, Sports is All Business podcast, where we continue to educate and empower, protect the athlete and the family's best interests alone. Pertaining to tomorrow's draft, Mr. Lamar Jackson. I've been asked that question several times. There's no shameless plug. So for those who are wondering, yes, Mr. Lamar Jackson out of Louisville will be drafted in the first round. I'm going to say that he's going to be drafted either 12 at the Buffalo Bills or 15 at the Arizona Cardinals. I do not foresee him dropping to New Orleans Saints or the New England Patriots. Mr. Jackson is a once-in-a-lifetime player. If you really want to know about, again, how this NFL draft works pertaining to quarterbacks, by all accounts, Mr. Saquon Barkley is the best player in the draft. Once again, talk about business. So if Saquon Barkley is the best player in the draft and these contracts are slotted, why is everyone projecting or paying quarterbacks to go higher? Once again, it's only 32 quarterbacks in the National Football League. Only 9 are franchise quarterbacks up to this point. You talk about how many Super Bowl quarterbacks there is and won over the last few years. You got Tom Brady, obviously Ben Roethlisberger. You have, Russell Wilson. You have pretty much Aaron Rodgers. He won one. But again, you got a couple of guys that you sprinkle here and there with the Matt Ryans, the Cam Newtons of the world who didn't win but actually made it. Other than that, you got a guy such as Josh McCown that's going on 40 years old, still playing in the biggest media market in the world in New York for whatever reason. At the end of the day, again, when I tell people all the time that the best athletes don't necessarily play in the National Football League, well, like I said, that makes my argument when the reality is you got guys, again, whether it's Colin Kaepernick or a few other players that are still not, signed to this day. So again, it's a business, and it's their job to understand the business. It's their job to understand that what they're getting themselves into, contractually speaking. It's their job to understand that as a pro athlete, football-wise, if you're a first-round draft pick in the National Football League, your average career is 9 years. Again, those are factual information, factual numbers. If you happen to make one Pro Bowl, you're probably going to be 11.9 to 12 years. So again, 12 years in the National Football League, you should be doing it right for yourself. I don't feel that anyone that played 12 years in the league should be actually, even at this day, right working for or punching the clock for someone else. Because at the end of the day, that means you didn't do right by yourself, pertaining to your money, pertaining to your business, and pertaining to your knowledge of the game. So again, my name is Robert T. Green. I know this show is going to be kind of cut short today because I'm kind of struggling right now, again, trying to get this video organized right. If there's any questions, I'm glad to take them at this point. I want to make sure that I don't leave anybody hanging. And like I try to tell you guys all the time, the one reason why I'm doing this show is simply because I'm here to educate and empower and protect you. As a fan, if you got any questions regarding things you want to talk about, you want to hear, again, today the NCAA and the committee, Condoleezza Rice, want to do away with the one and done and ask for the assistance of the NBA and the NBA PA. I can strongly suggest that's not going to really happen because too many people are making too much money. So again, for them to cut off their nose to spite their face, I think Ms. Condoleezza Rice is going to find out that end of the day, what she believes to be isolated into basketball, what she believes to be isolated into who she thinks is the only reason why this goes. Like I know a lot of people blame the brands or the sneakers or the shoes. No, because reality is that's who these kids want to, work with, or they want to wear their stuff. So that's not the issue. The issue is there's so many people that literally are working with these children and these families only to basically make sure that every dollar that goes through their pocket and where that goes from left and right is actually benefiting them. And again, that's the crime about it. Sports trafficking is just as prevalent as human trafficking and sex trafficking. It might not be as dangerous, but it's definitely as lucrative. And reality is when you come to being an athlete in the world today, you really have to protect yourself. You can't just, make yourself accessible to anybody at any time. One of the things I told one of our clients the other day is to stop putting their actual personal business out on social media. And what that means is that you're a public figure now. So when you do like lives on your actual location where you at, when your children are out there, people are always supportive of you and your son. And therefore that you got to make sure to understand you got to protect yourself, you got to protect them. And at the same time, you got to understand that you are now in a situation where you're going to be attacked just for being you. Again, everybody want to glamorize what it means to be an athlete from gear or playing games, but there's a lot of work that goes into it. These young men are not just doing sports 20 hours a week. That's what the NCAA put out the TV and the media to discuss. And again, if you don't believe me, all you got to do is say, hey, have you ever seen any type of show pertaining to sports in the day of a life of a student athlete? Use the term student athlete. You've never seen it. Out of the 100 players on the football team, 85 are scholarship, full scholarship, 15 are preferred walk-ons. Those GPAs come from those 15 preferred walk-ons. You might get a show covering what they do. But regarding those that are the guys that are going to be, like I said, drafted in the top 15 to 20 to top 60, none of them have degrees. Sports is not a game. Sports is all business. Check us out at prepostgame.com. Follow us at the Players Rep 1 on Instagram, Players Rep 1 on Twitter. I appreciate you guys. Look forward to seeing you next week. God bless.